Welcome to M&G Agency Life. This time, we're going full tech mode.
Yep, Series 3 is all about the tech that powers the work we do here at Mearns & Gill.
Because behind everything we do, there's a whole lot of clever stuff happening behind the scenes.
And we're here to break it all down. No jargon, no complicated waffle, just clear, practical insight.
We'll be chatting SEO and web builds.
Video that grabs attention in the first few seconds.
Digital retargeting that actually works, and lots more.
So, whether you're a business owner, a marketer, or just someone who loves understanding how things work,
this series is for you. Let's talk tech. Shall we do this?
Oh, heck yes.
Welcome back to M&G Agency Life Series 3, Let's Talk Tech.
So far on Series 3, we've talked SEO, retargeting and websites, and our mind has been blown.
They've been blown on every episode so far, so no pressure. Today we're tackling something every business thinks they're doing really well. Digital content.
Yep, this one is about digital content strategies.
Joining us today is Ryan, our digital marketing manager here at M&G. Ryan, welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the podcast
exciting.
room.
Your first time.
Yes, my very first podcast.
Oh, wow. We'll be easy on him then.
It'll be very easy. Don't worry, it'll be fine.
So by the end of this episode, you'll understand how to create content with intent, not just fill feeds. Is that right, Ryan?
That's certainly the goal.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Well, look, let's just get to it then. Ryan, let's start simple. So firstly, when we say digital content strategy, what do we mean?
Yeah, I think when people mention content strategy, they're picturing a content calendar, which is, of course, super important. But there's so many considerations to be made before sort of thinking about cadence. So I think content strategy is really like the why, the commercial logic, the business goal that feeds into sort of every aspect of said content. So, content isn't just about visibility or staying active. It's the intent that forces teams to ask the important questions before going into production.
Okay.
So, like, for example, what will it take for audiences to trust us? What will remove friction before a sale? Does this channel align with this audience? So, once you've done that and thought about KPIs, realistic targets, not just numbers, but agreed focused points between you and your team, everything else is just production and distribution.
So a lot more than just a calendar then.
Yeah,
okay,
sounds like
fair.
it.
Yep.
So I guess, why do you think so many businesses confuse content strategy with just posting regularly?
I think probably because it's easier to do
Yeah,
than to think,
exactly.
putting it bluntly. Time and resource too. Posting feels productive. So when you're posting, you see likes, you see shares, you see clicks. I think when it comes to social as well, businesses sometimes fall into the trap of looking at that as a separate entity and not actually looking at it as a major channel for visibility and business traction. So, when you see the activity come through, as I said, the likes, the shares, it sort of gives that illusion of progress.
Yeah.
So, I think, for social and all forms of content, having sort of an underpinning strategy ensures that, there's intention behind the content. So teams know exactly who they're talking to, how and where to reach them, sort of considering the channels that they really want to hit, and how to move audiences along your marketing funnel is essentially the goal.
All right. Okay. Interesting stuff so far. We're off to a good start, Ryan. Why is it important to decide why you're creating content before choosing where it goes? I mean, there's a lot of options out there, isn't there? There's so many.
Yeah.
The digital space is huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think in digital marketing, every channel has a different audience mindset and a different role in the buyer journey. So, I mean, you guys will know this, but I think it's just taking the time to pause and really consider it. So, for example, LinkedIn is great for B2B credibility and sort of B2B leads. Instagram, good for sort of visual storytelling and community. Google, it's rewarding content that solves specific problems. So if you don't defy the why and what, your content risks being irrelevant no matter where you post it. So really considering the channel, first and foremost, that should be the first thing you ask, along with who your audience is when looking at producing a content strategy.
So I guess it's about discovering where your audience hang out as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the most common purposes content should serve for a business?
So that is a loaded question.
I know, where do you start?
Aimee, straight in with the heavy stuff.
No, absolutely. I guess, firstly, content should always serve a clearly defined business goal. So that's just number one, know. And, I'll go back on what I just said before, but I think, the number one thing when you're coming to a content strategy, particularly digital content strategy, is having that defined business goal at the top, because everything else will fall under that. And then when you move through that, you'll be able to sort of decipher the marketing goals. So, and there's so many. There's brand awareness and strategic positioning, important across almost all channels. That's about leveraging the likes of blogs or organic social video content to tell your story, the proof points, the narrative behind the brand's overarching mission and vision. There's the education piece as well, solving problems and answering questions your audience may have. That's typically long-form content, blogs, articles, skimmable listicles. This again helps build credibility. And it's also typically the prelude to driving something super important, and that's conversion.
Yeah.
And that leads into, the absolute biggie. Most businesses have this goal, whether it's in the form of sales or stakeholders or, what, but that leads, marketing qualified and sales qualified leads. Securing these tends to lean on more sort of outbound marketing, gated content as well, and highly sort of targeted ads. It's pivotal, especially when you're trying to reach a new market base and hit those company goals that we spoke about before. So really, there's absolutely loads, but the key is that they're specific to your business objectives, the marketing ones, that is. And I guess, just to reiterate my previous point, if it doesn't move the needle in at least one sort of area towards the business goal, it's just noise.
There's a lot to think about here, isn't there? Especially for a business, if you're contemplating doing all this on your own. Obviously, with us, we will do a very in-depth discovery, and we will do the whole audience mapping piece and, make it as easy as we can for our clients. But if you're out there doing it on your own, there's quite a lot of considerations that you've just spoken about. And something you said there was quite interesting about if it doesn't move the needle. So what do we do if we are out there and we're kind of pushing out our own content and it's not really landing, it's not really doing much? What should someone do if that's the case? What would you suggest?
Well, I think that 9 times out of 10, if that's the case, and I'm speaking idealistically here, but 9 times out of 10, they probably won't have that solid strategy in place. Yeah. Or maybe they do, and it's just not working, which is also totally fine. That's one thing about a strategy. Once it's drafted, it doesn't have to be the final product. I mean, it should always be reiterated based on results. So I guess for anyone that is producing content out there on their own, it's just taking that step back, looking at the content and saying, okay, this isn't working. Why isn't it working? Going back to what the initial strategy, talks to, the business goals, the marketing goals, the channels, everything on that document, or, whichever format it is, and really just asking yourself, where's the friction here? And then that will allow you to sort of start reshaping what you're producing.
Yeah, so reviewing what you're putting out there, because I guess it might be quite common just to take that scattergun approach. I'm going to post every day and maybe something will happen. Whereas strategist, someone who's into content like yourself, Ryan, you'd be like, no, don't be doing that.
We have seen a few pieces and I'm like, why would you put that there? But, it's all about testing and learning at the same time. And that's
just Aimee's Instagram feed you're talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely not. I am considered imprecise with my posting. Thank you.
Look, just drifting off here, I've actually got a friend who, when she goes on holiday, has a spreadsheet of her own content.
Stop it.
Day 1, the blue bikini. Photo by the fountain. Day 2. And that's taking it to are you like that in your life, Ryan?
No.
I feel like,
first of all, you said the word spreadsheet and that gave me chills. There's so many tools out there as well to sort of, again, content strategy isn't just a planner, but having a plan is obviously super important. So but there's so many tools out there other than an Excel to keep an eye on where your content is going.
How should content differ then across platforms like websites, social media, mailers, paid channels? What's your thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, no. So again, I think that comes back to that initial strategy, looking at, you know, the channels you're leveraging and sort of placing, you know, which areas you want to hit in that buyer journey. So, you know, or that marketing funnel. So, content should absolutely always differ depending on where it lives. So, for example, with websites, we're looking at how to, you know, we're looking at tailoring content so that it's optimized for search and you know, long form pieces, and that, you know, it's also, you know, I touched on search there and SEO, that it's also now being recognized by AI, because that you know, answer engine optimization is you know, SEO isn't going away yet, but you know, answer engine optimization is totally kind of showing how you know, it's definitely changing how content is structured on websites.
Yeah.
You got to be careful what you say here, because last week we had our web developers, we had Kirsty and Stephen on the podcast, and there was a little bit, I feel there's a bit of beef between digital and web.
Yeah.
But in a good way. The two complement each other really well.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I think that AI, you know, everyone's using it now to produce content and also to you know, to measure content in some ways, but it's still relatively quite new. So I'd totally expect that back and forth, because it's people, particularly in the marketing sphere, people are still finding where it fits, you know, and particularly within their disciplines.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I you know, as I said, content, it absolutely just, it needs to differ based on the channel. Because not just in terms of technical formats. So, you know, for example, like a TikTok video would not fit on, maybe it would, but it wouldn't look great on Facebook.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
And, you know, you need to think about your audience's expectations as well. So if they're on, just say they're on a website, it's going to be a bit jarring to see like an Instagram reel embedded on there. I mean, you could do it, but it's not going to have a huge impact.
Fair point. I don't like it when people, and this is like maybe a touchy subject, but I don't like when people post personal stuff on LinkedIn.
Oh, I know, there's a lot of it, isn't there?
There is, but it's like sometimes it's those, how do I weave in my son's 6th birthday and make it about careers and work-life balance?
Ambitions and starting them young.
Take it to Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care.
But that's an interesting point, because I think there is fatigue, you know, on LinkedIn, and particularly LinkedIn, because it's B2B and everyone's just trying to sell their stuff. But, you know, I guess across all channels there's fatigue, because everyone thinks they know the formula. You know, so for example, I was talking to my colleagues about this the other day, like an ad or you know, even just like a organic post on social that is that's promoting a specific thing, like a webinar or you know, a product or a service. You know, there's that formula, you know, needs to have a headline, needs to have really nice image, needs to have value points, needs to have a call to action button on the graphic. That's a formula. And I think all that stuff that I've just mentioned is super important, but it's how it's you know, it's how it's all put together, you know, because I think now, do we really need to have a call to action on the graphic?
Yeah.
You know, is that, especially now with these formats, like, you know, a call to action may already be in an ad format, or, you know, so I think it's just not going with, you know, not being a sheep, not being a LinkedIn sheep,
definitely.
and actually just thinking about your audience, thinking about your content, and not being so rigid when it comes to you know, that creative formula.
So are you saying that it's a mistake to post the same content everywhere then?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, content should, as I said, it should always be tailored for the channel you're pushing it on. And that's not to say that you can't repurpose content.
Yeah.
You know, a creative for organic social could absolutely be leveraged on paid. But you'll likely need to rethink the messaging, you know, whether it's for a specific audience or promoting a specific thing, whereas organic you can afford to be could be a bit wider approach, or else you're just wasting budget with those ads. You know, even across different organic social platforms, a creative suited to Instagram might not land well on LinkedIn. Again, as I said, you could use those same components, but just really be creative and intentional with how you use those sort of design creative components, and think about, the sentiment, the copy, the post format. Is it going to achieve what you want to achieve on that platform? You can look up tons of benchmarks and best practices for specific platforms like that. Those specific platforms, obviously, tends to be a audience groups mapped to those. So, for example, this is very generalized, but TikTok is, say, that slightly younger generation,
like us.
I didn't say that, Pete. But B2B, sorry, is LinkedIn is slightly older, more senior professionals. So
also like us.
Yeah, exactly.
We fit in all categories.
Exactly, but even like a blog post, like that. I think a lot of people would produce a blog post and be like, okay, it goes on our website, it's done. We'll do a social media post to promote it.
Yeah.
But it can be rewritten. It can be pushed out as well. There's now long form content ads that's coming onto LinkedIn. It can also be reshaped and teased on your newsletter. So no, you can get traction out of content. And as I said, repurpose it absolutely. But you absolutely no to just posting the same thing across everything.
Just copy and paste.
Okay.
Exactly.
Leads nicely onto this one then. How should businesses think about long form versus short form content? Any thoughts on that one, Ryan?
So I think that short form and long form content, they serve different jobs, but they should absolutely be unified. In terms of that strategic approach, that wider viewpoint. So in simple terms, short form, video bites, listicles, that's an article that's a list of, top
Listicles,
five.
sorry.
A listicle, yeah.
I've never
great
heard that word.
I
think you said it before and I was like, did he just mispronounce
No,
it?
listicle. Because I think when
Wow.
you say article, people are like, oh my God, 800, 700 words.
Yeah.
Or maybe 1,000 words on thought leadership. But no, a listicle is like, and you see them all the time. I'm just putting a name to them.
Yeah,
So
okay.
top 5. I mean, we just posted one the other day, like top 5 AI platforms to use within marketing disciplines, like that kind of thing.
I
So
get it.
Even though I think that articles on websites are typically looked at as long form content, but they can be short form, quick, skimmable. But I mean, that short form, the short form pieces, they tend to be the devices that actually pull your audience in by piquing their interest. And they do that because they can grab immediate attention. So you think about a TikTok video, if it's done right and it's got a compelling message up front, it's going to pull you in. But it's not going to do anything without sort of being paired up with good, solid, long form content. For example, case studies, white papers, gated content, thought leadership, proof points that retain audiences, that build trust and keep them engaged. So, they kind of retain, nurture, whereas the short form pulls them in. So it's that pull keep kind of thing.
Okay, so let's have a chat about consistency and quality of that digital content. How important is consistency compared to volume?
So again, it totally just depends on the channel. But overall, I would say consistency is everything. Really, I would look at consistency over volume every time. It doesn't matter if you post once a week, a few times a week. It keeps you seen. And it's more strategic to have that regular cadence. Volume is different. Volume can be dangerous. It's you can also sometimes delve into the realm of posting for the sake of it when it comes to volume. If you've got we need to get 7 posts out a week, that can very quickly become bad for your business, and you're suddenly producing content that doesn't have a meaning.
It's annoying people.
It's annoying people, and
just
it's not.
check out.
And again, coming back to that initial thing we spoke about having a good content strategy, it can very quickly, it can quickly go off in its own tangent and not be aligned with business goals. So it becomes noise, essentially. The other thing about volume is, and don't get me wrong, I mean, volume is important, but more from that consistency point of view. Volume on Facebook versus TikTok, for example, is completely different. Again, each channel we should be posting to each channel regularly.
Yeah.
Those are channels you're active on. But you might want to consider a little bit more posts on TikTok due to the nature of the algorithm. It's quick pace, it's fast, it's, you know, do. You know, whereas Facebook or actually more so like LinkedIn, you can afford to, you know, 2-3 posts a week, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's maybe the only consideration I would have when it comes to volume is actually looking at the specific channel itself. But, you know, having good consistency and, you know, making sure that the content is similar in terms of look, feel, tone of voice, even if it's promoting completely different things, that's everything.
Yeah.
What do you think is more damaging? Posting badly or just not posting at all?
My response to this is going to be super annoying. But
All right, come on. Let's hear it.
both is so damaging.
Right.
So, I mean, if you don't post, be it socials or blogs or video content, you know, whatever it is, you're invisible. But if you post loads but badly, you're actively damaging your brand and your audience perception. So it can never be one or the other.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, you have to post both consistently and strategically.
Okay, interesting. That's always the one that gets me. I'm always like, I don't know what I'd rather. Anyway, here we are. So how can businesses create content strategies that are actually sustainable?
Yeah, so I suppose it's about being, you know, when you're in that strategic phase, you're looking at the strategy. It's about being super selective on the content pillars that you're going to cover. So this is before we consider channels, formats, etc. It's the content pillars, so the thematic approaches. That's a good way ensuring that you don't waste time or budget on pieces that will not ultimately contribute to your business goals. I would say also considering your resource is super important as well. The content strategy is not going to play out without the manpower behind it, without the right tools, platforms. You know, whether you've got a team of 2, 5 or 20, or you've got freelance designers or copywriters onboarded, you always need to think about the long-term goals and be realistic, and having as I said, the right tools, software, whether that's, you know, design, AI, you know, for writing long form, it's happening. Like you need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so, and then delegate based on expertise as well. So, and that doesn't just include the marketing team either. That, you know, I think it's always super important when, you know, coming and producing really good content that aligns with a steady strategy is having, you know, good subject matter experts you can lean on. So for us, we're really lucky to have, you know, great clients that are coming to us with their needs, with their problems, and we can help take their business goals and turn them into really good marketing strategies and content strategies. But, you know, it's really difficult for a marketeer to write thought leadership pieces on. I mean, I've written pieces on, you know, plug and abandonment technologies.
Yeah.
I am not an engineer, so I needed that that person. And what I will say is, as much as I mentioned AI earlier, don't lean on AI for all that stuff. You know, make sure that if you can get a subject matter expert as part of that team, then absolutely. But yeah, I would say your time, resource, platforms, all that kind of stuff. That's how we make this sustainable.
Very interesting stuff. Right, Ryan, we've covered the content strategy. We've covered the prep side of things. Let's move to the measurement then. How can a business measure whether their content strategy is actually working? Yeah,
well, I think, first of all, this is so important. It's the most important piece of you know, reviewing your content strategy. And I think it should be factored in initially to within that content strategy in terms of timings. But yeah, a most important step, because essentially measuring is going to inform how the strategy evolves. So, you know, you can start with phase 1 measurement is how I like to call it. And that's marketing metrics. So these give you a good first indication on how good content is performing. So views, reach, engagement, click-throughs, number of form completions, you know, email open rates. But these are marketing metrics.
Okay.
So they're super useful to come to phase 2 of reporting. And I'll touch on that phase 2 in a second. But I think that, you know, the number one thing to say is a lot of marketeers and a lot of people within business are quickly starting to look at, as I said, impressions, views, reach, engagement. They're starting to dub these as vanity metrics. And And I sort of get it, but at the same time, the only way they become vanity metrics is if we're not doing phase 2 of that reporting. And that phase 2 is the impact on the business. So, for example, we look at impressions, we look at engagement rate, we can see the traction and how we're actually getting people over to, say, a white paper that's gated on our website. But let's look at who's downloading it. Are they solid leads? Are they MQLs? Are they SQLs? If they're not...
What's an MQL?
Sorry.
SQL.
What is that?
So you've got a marketing qualified lead.
Right.
Okay.
And then a sales qualified lead.
Right.
So So we would review
We knew
leads.
that.
Yeah.
Just for the listener, we wanted to...
Just clarify.
But yeah, if it's not actually having a great impact in the business, and the conclusions that we make on that are informed by those marketing metrics, impressions, reach, engagements, all that. But if you're not doing both sets of measurement, then yeah, they do become, the first phase there does become just vanity metrics. So doing both is super important. And yeah, that's why businesses should do it, to actually see if it's working, to see if there's an ROI there, if it's getting the desired result, if it's actually, not wasting budget.
Yeah.
And that phase 2 for us as an agency is really important because at the end of the day, we're here to help grow businesses. So if we can show in our data that return on investment has been worthwhile, then we're doing it right.
And you're absolutely right. And sometimes clients don't even need to see those marketing metrics. I mean, we like to keep them in the loop and we show them. But what I can't speak for all clients, but what they're typically looking for is the leads or sales or, the business goals, the impact it makes directly to their business. So, but that phase 1, again, is super important because it's how we get there. It shows, are we getting there? Or else, if you don't actually look at the business impact, they're vanity metrics.
So how often should content strategies be reviewed or adjusted then?
Yeah, so I think that, and I think we just touched on it there, it should continuously be revised. As content strategy, I think, I said this before, we're not going to produce one and then stick to it regardless of what, if things aren't working, we need to revisit them. And I think that's why that phase 1 of measurement, impressions, engagements, etc., that can be a really good initial indicator of whether or not the strategy is performing well. It needs, any decisions, any changes to said strategy needs to be backed by data. I guess that's the major step before actually reviewing the content strategies, ensuring that you're keeping a close eye on those metrics, etc. Okay. It also, I guess, depends on the channel and the format your strategy is focusing on the most. So, in general, as much as you can afford. For example, if your content goes live on a Monday and it hasn't gone viral by a Wednesday, that doesn't mean it's failed, but it's worthwhile keeping an eye on that.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff, Ryan. Really interesting. Okay then, Ryan, let's move on to the next segment of the podcast. It's a new feature that we've created. Well, I have. Amy's.
I had no part in the creation
You're
of this.
coming around to it, though. New feature for Series 3, and it is called...
404 Answer Not Found.
I know you had a sore throat, but I didn't think it was that.
I know, that's what it sounds like. I don't even need the
No, you
effects
don't
today.
even need it.
Right, okay, so how does it work, Amy?
Just a heads up, none of these questions will make sense and the answers don't even matter. So it's a tricky one.
It is. It's quick fire.
Yeah.
Let's get to it, Ryan. If content strategy was a person, what bad habit would they have?
They'd just be overthinking everything.
Fair.
Day in my life. If every piece of content had to justify itself, what would most say?
I want attention.
What's the most dramatic thing a social media post could say?
Like me, please.
Fair. If hashtags had a few lanes, how would they feel right now?
Trendy. I'm sorry.
Trendy?
That was too, because they'd be trending,
Oh, I see what you did.
Sorry.
Right, we'll do one more then. If a content calendar could talk, what would it complain about the most?
It would probably be saying no, you can't move me to tomorrow,
Stop changing your mind.
I don't care if that's going out. You said I was going out. Yeah.
Brilliant. That'll do it. Thank you for humouring us with
404 Answer Not Found. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving back to content strategy now then, Ryan. If people remember one thing about digital content strategy from this episode, what should it be?
Probably a point I made just before, and it's almost a very generic point, but I just think it's super important, and that's, if it's not aligning with business goals, then it's just background noise. If it's not moving the needle forward, it's not doing anything.
I think that's a good point.
Interesting. Okay, so let's recap. Content needs a purpose and a strategy. Different channels do different jobs, so need a different content associated with it. And strategy beats spontaneity.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
All of the time, he says.
We've not been listening.
Goodness me. Right, okay, what's one simple thing someone could do this week to improve their digital content strategy?
Look at it. And then look at your metrics and then, if you've looked at your metrics and they're looking okay, then talk to people in the business, whether you're B2C or B2B, and see, is there any attribution there? And then revisit it and think, what could we do a little bit differently? What's not, if there are any gaps, think about addressing them.
That's been really useful. Right, so that is just about a wrap on this episode. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great breaking down digital content strategy properly.
Yep, and as always, if you'd like to know more about anything we've discussed, you can drop us a line.
Maybe you want to nail your content strategy, we can help. You can find us on Instagram at MearnsGill, and you can also find Mearns and Gill on Facebook, LinkedIn or online.
Yep, you can also text us directly from the podcast platform with any questions. We'd love to hear from you.
So now we understand content strategy. What about getting the creative right? That is next time. We'll catch you then.
Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.